Welcome to Cosmic Soup. My name is Magnolia Moon, and tonight I'd like to tell a personal story. I am a new mother. It hasn't been a year yet. I'm not going to say how specifically old my child is. Personally, growing up, I've always been terrified of childbirth. I was just like, no, never. That's something never for me. And even when I was a teenager, I had always said, like, no, I'm not having kids until the world's a better place. And I've always been super big into politics and into spirituality. So I could try to find, a midway point to finding how to restore balance to all these systems. I've always had some inclination, as long as I can remember, about things interconnecting. And I had this urge to find truth from what I can remember being just a very young child, asking my mom questions like, what about death? And all this other stuff. And unfortunately, because of the answers she gave me and what was known at the time, I was terrified about many things for a very long time in my life. But particularly on the subject of childbirth was after I had finally met my fiance. It took him 6 years to convince me otherwise, that this is something that we wanted to do, because I had finally found a reason to want to have kids. It was to say that I could give a better future to the children. I could be the teacher, for all the older generations will be gone, but we are the new passers of information. So old methods don't have to stick around. And when I finally was going through pregnancy, it felt like I was going through this magical transformation. I actually felt like my hair was all long and super thick and amazingly shiny, and my nails were growing really fast, and it was just the most magical thing. My body knew what it was doing, even though I had no freaking clue about any of this. I was never connected to nature that much back when I was a kid either. I used to live in the city and I found it was absolutely beautiful, all the architecture and the lights, but as a kid I was like, ugh, trees. There's so many trees and they all look the same. But when I was going through this transformation, everything just sort of started to make sense. It felt like I was living out part of my life purpose. And there was so many parables that I was being taught. And again, prior to this situation, I was not a very spiritual person. I was somebody who loved the knowledge of knowing and understanding spirituality, but I wasn't a very interconnected spiritual person. I didn't even know if I believed in a deity yet or not. But after I hit the point of childbirth, when I was going through labor, it was a very different story. Even just before it, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get through this? This is like a point where you're basically having to go through a miracle to transform your body to push out something that just does not normally fit out something that size. And I would research, and I was just trying to find information. What causes labor to be induced, and what does all this? And nobody knows. So I was like, okay, well, I really don't want to be induced. I want to go natural. And I knew a lot of people, I knew very few people that were naturally, that had a natural birth. There was many that were C-sectioned and many that were induced because they were either falling behind. But there was one time that I was super pregnant, and me and my husband, fiance, whatever you want to call him, we went out to the U-Pick, and we were picking raspberries, and I noticed that there were some that would fall directly off the bush. You wouldn't even have to try, and then there was other ones that you really had to pull, and it would kind of pull half the vine with it. And it hit me that this was a parable, and it was just like, when the fruit is ready, it will fall off the vine with little effort. But if you try to push it too soon, you'll have much difficulty. Well, thinking back to that, I was looking up, and I thought, well, maybe it's triggered by the mother wanting to go into labor. It's like a mutual agreement between the child and the mother. And so with a week to go, I started meditating, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do it today. We're going to do it today. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm going to see this as like a deep meditation. I don't meditate, but we're going to focus. This is a meditation. We're going to get through it. So a few hours in, and I meditate and I focus about us connecting and everything going as it was, and bam! I actually went into labor. Now, it took a little while to get started because I was nervous, but as I said, okay, no, I want this, and I focused on it going faster, and I just got into it. 4 hours later, I was fully ready to go. I had a baby. Yep, I had a baby, and not very long at all for my first child, so it led me to really say that there's something far more to this whole experience than what we're really, what science can talk about right now. One other aspect to that, though, was while I was experiencing it, I finally understood what it was like to fully meditate, because I was in my body and I knew I was experiencing this insane pain, but I was within myself and I was completely calm, and my breathing was my main focus. It was just get through this pain for the stretch and keep on going. And I wasn't even focused on the pain, and suddenly I was already ready to push out a baby. So I mean, that was pretty intense in itself. And that's not even the beginning. After I actually had my son, well, I don't know how to put this, but it was like all this understanding of the fractal of existence started to play a part. I would be watching, say, Baby Einstein, and I'd realize that we were teaching, shapes and colors, the basic things that make up our reality. And all these little things that are so simple, so basic to us, we had to learn it all. We had to learn to stand up. We had to learn what balance was, equilibrium. We had to learn how to step. We had to learn how to smile. Oh, that's another thing. When he used to smile, he was so young, and he would look up at the lights, and he'd just smile, and I'm like, you can't even look at me and smile, but you keep looking up to the light and you keep smiling every single time, every light. What is up with this? And then I started thinking, what is light? Light is energy. What are we? We are energy. We require this energy to make our body go. And then I started contemplating more and more, and it was like I was receiving this understanding from a place that I didn't really acknowledge before. Anyway, as the story went on, there is so much to get into detail, so but I had a very deep understanding. It felt like I had connected to a multitude of past lives going through the experience of childbirth, because I wanted it to be natural. So I went as far as I could, or I thought I could, until I had reached 10 and had to push, and then I said, no, please, can I please have some pain relief? So I did not have a completely natural childbirth. I will say I did have an epidural I was at 10. They weren't supposed to give it to me, but I was biting the bed, screaming for bloody murder, saying, no, I have been up for 38 hours. Please give me pain relief. This is like 10 times worse than it should be. So yes, I was working overnights at that time, so I had some really bad timing for when I decided I was going to try this whole test. But next time, if I choose to have another child, I will plan that a little bit better, and I'll even give you guys some more feedback on that whole experience. But in the meantime, I really just want to focus on raising my son the best that I can, to give him the best, to really focus on making his future better. So it was refreshing. I do believe that this has been spoken about in spirit science, that looking at the child, you kind of start focusing on the outside. Now, I've always been a very empathetic person, so it wasn't empathy that opened up in me, but it was more so an understanding that I am the adult. I am no longer just the child. And this goes for a lot of us. If you were born after 1987 and the harmonic convergence, even if you don't know what that is, chances are you probably are having a bit of difficulty adjusting to the way our system is. And whether you're depressed, or you're just constantly sick, or if you're just hate your job and really wish that you could achieve more in life, you are now the adult. And that's the difference. And I don't know if it's I've always looked to say, well, why aren't these people doing anything to make society better? All these politicians and whatnot. Well, you know what? Most of those people are in the baby boomer age group, and most of them don't believe in spirituality. Anyway, that's my experience, so I'm gonna go do my momly duties. Thank you for listening. If you have any stories, and if you want to hear more, I have many more stories to tell in that event. But thanks for listening, and have a good night. Bye.